Alright everyone, we now have the most insane anti-gunnery that I think that I've actually ever seen. We've seen some humdingers, people arguing, well, the magazine shouldn't exist. Guns should only have a built-in mag well or be bolt action or something like that. Revolvers, they're fine, but only if they carry 5 rounds. 6 is scary, of course. You can kill 6 people in short order. We've seen some real weird shit. We've got the Bruin decision, right? So the Supreme Court has said gun control needs to have a premise built into relatively early U.S. history. So something roughly contemporary with the first at least century of the nation's existence. There needs to be a historical precedent by which anti-gunnery would be accepted generally, a precedent by which it can be reasoned to be acceptable. I would point out that this effectively nullifies all gun control in the United States, because the first historical precedent you can speak to is the Cruikshank decision, which was almost 100 years after the Revolution was fought. It was in the 1870s. Post-Civil War is the first time that you have any legally binding anti-gunnery in the United States. It was pioneered by the Jim Crow Southern Democrats as a method to disarm former slaves and to prevent them from becoming a problem. They might get uppity. They might want more rights. They might want to be treated equal. Well, we can't have them having guns. They might use them on us, and we don't want to treat them equally. That's the birth of gun control in the United States. I love it when the leftoids say, well, the ownership of guns was basically pioneered to keep slaves in line. No, it was gun control that was pioneered for that reason. Now, the founders wanted guns because guns were ubiquitous, and they were being attacked by hostile so-called native forces. They had to fight their own government. That was a little bit alarming to them. Paul Revere didn't say the British are coming, because they were all British at the time. He said the regulars were coming. And they wanted a militia and shit like that. They wanted to be able to muster, because they're like, okay, Europeans might invade, Indians might invade, the Canadians might be a problem. So let's cross over the border in the War of 1812 and attack Canada. That'll go over really well, by the way. And some non-canonical stories regarding tornadoes and shit like that afterwards that I'll get into some other historical time. But Hawaii just effectively ruled that, fuck the Second Amendment. It means absolutely nothing. I wish I were being hyperbolic when I summarize their judgment there in that way, but I'm going to read you a tweet. It's from Charlie Kirk, and then I'm going to read the quote of note that he includes here. The Hawaii Supreme Court, so keep in mind this is their Supreme Court, has issued a ruling flagrantly ignoring the U.S. Constitution, holding there is no right to bear arms in Hawaii, and any resident may be imprisoned for carrying one. This is about concealed and open carry. The Supreme Court has repeatedly held what the Constitution obviously says. Americans have a constitutional right to bear arms. In D.C. v. Heller, they plainly stated this is an individual right, not a collective right. Whatever that is. I would agree, there's some confusion. In McDonald v. Chicago, they held this right applies to the states. In New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, they ruled this right covers the public possession of handguns. And much, much more, according to the historical precedence part, but that's inapplicable situationally. The court also cites foreign laws and Hawaii's laws when it was still an independent kingdom, neither of which have any bearing on the state's current laws or obligations under the Constitution. In fact, the Hawaii Supreme Court essentially declares the entire Constitution null and void. Again, this is not hyperbolic. In the state, writing, as the world turns, it makes no sense for society to pledge allegiance to the founding era's culture, realities, laws, and understanding of the Constitution. They then go on to quote The Wire. I guess it's an HBO series. The thing about the old days, the old days, is the specific quote. Broadcast September 24, 2006, Season 4, Episode 3. I guess if you're a fan of The Wire, you've probably heard that quote. I have never seen a more mumbo-jumbo court filing, actually, I think, so far. We've seen some weird shit, like with the Colorado filing. Well, Trump is ineligible because he committed insurrection, and our proof is our ass. Our proof is that it's our opinion that an insurrection occurred and that Trump was directly involved with it. Legal filings? No, we don't need any legal precedent. In the more recent anti-gun case in Massachusetts, they did the same thing. They simply said, well, there's a long-standing historical precedent of banning certain kinds of firearms in both the state of Massachusetts and the United States. But they never mention any cases of this. They don't cite any case law. You know why? Because there actually is none. Not outside of the contemporary modern period. For the first 100 years, there was nothing. For the next 100 years, there was very little, other than the development of the NFA later and so forth, and some of the, the early anti-gunnery of the 20s and 30s, like, the anti-Tommy gun thing, automatic weapons not being manufactured anymore. You got nothing. Literally nothing, other than a bunch of modern decisions, much of which happened in the last 30 or so years. It doesn't exist. It's just not real. It's literally imaginary, and then they're citing a fictional series quote here to evince their opinion, effectively saying, well, we don't have to abide by the Constitution. That's outdated and stuff. People wore powdered wigs back then, and they had no clue, and, they created the world's greatest empire of all time, but somehow they were a bunch of ignorant savages, basically, and didn't know what the fuck they were talking about, and their ideas are antiquated. Imagine if you applied that to the 13th Amendment, or the 14th Amendment, or the fucking right of free religion, and you said, well, the Constitution doesn't apply anymore. The founders' opinion with regards to not establishing a church is bullshit. So we're going to establish a church in our state. We're going to have a state-funded religious edifice that everyone has to go and, worship the governor or something. They'll have an emperor worship cult or something like the ancient Romans, stuff like that. The right to privacy, hey, founders never envisioned email. No, our law enforcement shouldn't need to get a warrant before they snoop through your phone or something like that without your consent. No, they should just be able to do it. The founders didn't envision smartphones and stuff like that. What about the 10th Amendment? Because the founders never envisioned Hawaii being a state. Can we just strip you of your state's autonomy, turn you back into a territory, and subjugate you like bitches? Well, I guess we can. Founders didn't know that Hawaii was going to be part of the United States. They're like, oh, there's this volcanic series of islands off the Pacific coast that we know of. And, they've got a kingdom and stuff, and they eat pineapples and shit all day. And, it's a foreign country. Up until the 1940s, it was a foreign country. Alaska. But only the original 13 colonies are covered under the 10th. Okay, women can't vote. We're reinstituting slavery. Prohibition, well, we've got 2 amendments with regards to that, so I don't know, maybe half the states are dry and half the states are wet or something. Your right to privacy only has to do with your paper correspondence and physical dwelling. Well, the founders never envisioned a car, so the authorities can go ahead and search through it at their leisure. Well, I just stopped you. I'm going to search your car. No, I don't consent. You don't have a warrant. Well, who cares? Oh, so you're going to bring it back to like the Kansas two-step? Or I can't remember the state. There's a two-step law there. A cop would walk away, come back to talk to you, and basically stall for time and stuff like that. And, don't even get me started on the right to a fair trial or something like that. Oh, fair trial. We're swimming the witch again. But, basically, the state has decided that if you float when you are put in a body of water, that you're a witch, and, we're going to burn you to death. Think about the revisionism that this ruling would extend to if it were upheld. The good news is this will probably go before the SCOTUS, and I have a feeling that you're going to have a decision against them. SCOTUS really needs to revisit Bruin again based on the Massachusetts case, now the Hawaii case, as well as several other states, Maryland, New York, and really needs to reassert itself and more correctly define, look, when we talk about historical precedent, we're saying something that was contemporary to the last founder dying, which I believe was Hamilton in 1823, if I remember correctly. Well, then you got nothing. No gun control whatsoever, because none existed. Gun control back then was, I'm the gunsmith in your town, and I don't like you, so I'm not selling you this musket. Go and get a musket elsewhere. You'll have to go 2 towns over to the next gunsmith or something. That's the only thing. There was never any law in the books. People talk to me about territorial law. Well, back in the Old West, the sheriff could have people check their guns at the office before they were allowed to go to the saloon. Yeah, in a U.S. territory that no longer exists, there was no state. So it's not fully incepted. Effectively, you had direct democracies in most of those western towns. For the better part of a century, mainly, it was like the council got together or the people voted in a fully democratic context because there was no state government. There wasn't a fully incepted, fully legal local government. It was out of necessity more than anything else because, I mean, there weren't enough people there to incept an actual state. Ta-da! All gun control is illegal. That's about all. Peace out.